Right now, and as you press play on this video, you just call, oh, the Sahel Desert is still warm from the firefight that changed everything. You are watching Africa Power Report. And what you're about to hear is not analysis from a conference room. This is reporting from the edge of history, where the sand is still scorched and the boots of the Malian armed forces, the FAMa, have just pressed their mark into soil that was held hostage for a decade. November 14th, 2023. That date is now carved into the stone of African military history. The city of Kidal, in northern Mali, fell, not to insurgents, not to foreign advisors. It fell back into Malian hands. If you have followed this story, or if you are hearing it for the first time, stay with us, because this is not a recap. This is a frontline dispatch. Every fact you are about to hear is verified. Every development is current. And every word carries the weight of blood spilled in the red sand of the Sahel. This is Africa Power Report. Africa. Subscribe right now. Tap the bell, and because this channel does not wait for permission to tell the truth. Drop your location in the comments. Tell us where you are watching from. Your presence here is part of this story. We are going in. Listen carefully. For 11 years, from 2012 to 2023, the city of Kidal in northern Mali was beyond the reach of the Malian state. 11 years. The Malian flag could not fly there without violence. Malian soldiers could not enter without being ambushed. The government in Bamako, just 1,500 kilometers to the south, might as well have been on another continent. Kidal was the stronghold of the CSP, the strategic framework for the defense of the people of Azawad, a coalition of Tuareg separatist rebel groups that had turned this ancient desert city into their fortress. They called it ungovernable. They said Bamako would never take it back. They were wrong. In early November 2023, a large Malian armed forces column, backed by aerial surveillance and Turkish-made Bayraktar TB2 combat drones, moved north from Anefis. The FAMa had secured Anefis, a critical junction town roughly 110 kilometers south of Kidal, just weeks earlier. Now they were marching north. The operation was deliberate. It was methodical. And it was lethal. The Bayraktar TB2 drones, the same platform that changed the battlefield in Ukraine and Nagorno-Karabakh, disrupted rebel defensive positions before ground forces could be pinned down. Fighters who might have held their ground were forced to scatter. On November 14th, 2023, Mali's transitional president, General Assimi Goïta, addressed the nation. His words were brief and historic. He said, and I quote the official statement, "Today, our armed and security forces have seized Kidal." The Malian presidency called it, quote, "a significant victory that marks a historical turning point in the fight against terrorism in Mali." This was not just the capture of a city. This was the puncturing of a myth. The myth that the Malian state was too broken, too divided, too dependent on foreign forces to ever reclaim its own territory. The rebels claimed, as rebels always do, that they made a strategic decision to withdraw. But the evidence on the ground told a different story. The psychological fortress of Kidal had crumbled, and from across the region, from Niger to Burkina Faso, the response was immediate. Niger's military government called it the liberation of Kidal. Burkina Faso called it a pivotal moment. A nation had just proved that its territory was its own. To understand what just happened, what the fall of Kidal really means, we have to go back. We have to stand in 2012, when the sand was first soaked with a different kind of blood. In early 2012, a combination of Tuareg separatist fighters, some of them veterans returning from Libya after Muammar Gaddafi's fall, alongside Islamist militant groups swept across northern Mali with devastating speed. They captured city after city, Kidal, Gao, Timbuktu. 3 major northern cities fell in a matter of days. A French military intervention, Operation Serval, began in January 2013 and pushed the militants back from the major towns. But it did not resolve the fundamental conflict. The Tuareg separatist groups that controlled Kidal entered into uneasy negotiations with the Malian government. And for years, under the umbrella of international peace agreements and a United Nations peacekeeping mission called MINUSMA, Kidal remained a contested no-man's land where the Malian army simply could not operate freely. Between 2012 and 2014, Malian forces suffered humiliating military defeats in the Kidal region. The army, poorly equipped, poorly trained, poorly funded, was beaten back repeatedly. These defeats left a scar on the national psyche that would take years to heal. For a decade, the narrative was fixed. Western analysts said northern Mali was ungovernable. They said the solution required endless peacekeeping, endless negotiation, endless dependency on foreign military presence. MINUSMA, the UN mission, at its peak numbered over 15,000 troops from dozens of countries. And yet, after 10 years, Kidal was still not under Malian control. Then, in June 2023, everything shifted. The Malian transitional government, led by General Goita, formally requested the withdrawal of MINUSMA. The UN Security Council approved it on June 30th, 2023. The mission that had cost billions of dollars and hundreds of peacekeepers' lives began to pack up. What happened next confirmed every calculation Bamako had made. As MINUSMA handed over its bases, the rebel groups and the FAMa both raced to fill the vacuum. Clashes erupted around Bear in August 2023. The CMA, the Coordination of Azawad Movements, formally declared war on the government, and the FAMA, instead of retreating, advanced. Within 3 months of the UN withdrawal accelerating, the Malian armed forces had secured Anefis, and 3 months after that, they were standing in Kidal. What took 11 years could not be achieved under the old system. It was achieved in months under a new one. That is not a coincidence. That is a verdict. Every military transformation has a face, a leader whose decisions, right or wrong, change the trajectory of a nation. In Mali today, that face belongs to General Assimi Goita. Born in 1983 in the military town of Kadi, Goita rose through the ranks of the Malian Special Forces. He led the military coup of August 2020, and then a second coup in May 2021. His critics call him an authoritarian. His supporters call him the man who finally said, enough. Enough dependency, enough management of failure, enough of watching a foreign security architecture protect the interests of others while Malian villages burned. Under Goita's leadership, Mali took 3 decisions that changed the strategic reality on the ground. Decision 1, they expelled French forces. In early 2022, Mali formally ended the partnership with France's Operation Barkhane, which had operated in the Sahel since 2014. The French argued they were essential. Mali disagreed. The French left. Decision 2, they invited the Africa Corps. The successor to the Russian Wagner Group, the Africa Corps provided military training, reconnaissance sharing, and operational support that, according to Malian officials and fighters on the ground, was fundamentally different from what the West offered. There was a respect for Malian command authority. The objective was clear: territorial recovery. In 2023, Africa Corps troops arrived near the Intahaka mine in the Gao region, the largest artisanal gold mine in northern Mali, and helped secure it from insurgent control. Decision 3, they expelled MINUSMA. The move shocked many Western capitals, but the calculation was simple. MINUSMA was neutral. Mali was not interested in neutrality. It was interested in winning. But Goita did not act alone. The second key figure in this story sits not in Bamako, but in Ouagadougou. Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso. Born in 1988, Traoré came to power in a September 2022 coup. He is the youngest head of state in the world. He wears a red beret in deliberate tribute to Thomas Sankara, the revolutionary Burkinabe leader assassinated in 1987. Traoré and Goita, alongside Niger's General Abdourahmane Chiani, formed the backbone of what became, in September 2023, the Alliance of Sahel States, or AES. In July 2024 in Niamey, the 3 leaders signed a confederation treaty. In January 2025, they officially withdrew from ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States, which they said had become a tool of Western political pressure rather than a genuine vehicle for African interests. In December 2025, the AES launched its joint military force, 5,000 troops, inaugurated at an airbase in Bamako. General Goita described it as, and I am quoting, a historic turning point for the Sahel. Captain Traoré warned of a coming black winter, a phase of external pressure and economic sabotage designed to bring the AES nations to their knees. On the other side of this battlefield, The CSP, now reconstituted as the Azawad Liberation Front, or FLA, continues to contest FAMa control in the far north. Al-Qaeda affiliate JNIM, Jama'at Nusrat al-Islam wal-Muslimin, launched 321 terrorist incidents in Mali in 2024 alone, an 18% increase over 2023. In September 2025, JNIM declared an economic jihad, blockading fuel supplies to gold mines and attempting to strangle the government's revenue base. The battlefield is live, the players are in motion, and the stakes could not be higher. When the flag went up over Kidal on November 14th, 2023, the world reacted in two very different ways. And which reaction you saw depended entirely on whose side of history you were standing on. In Bamako, the streets erupted. Celebrations broke out across the capital. Ordinary Malians, who had grown up being told that Kidal was beyond reach, watched their flag fly there for the first time in over a decade. The FAMa soldiers returning from the north were welcomed as heroes. One civil society activist, Mamutu Koulibaly of the Collective for the Defense of the Military, publicly called for November 14th to be declared a national day of tribute to the armed forces. He said, and I am paraphrasing, "The capture of Kidal is the very expression of the people's will, the affirmation of Mali's total independence." Niger's military government was immediate and explicit. Colonel Major Abdrahmane Amado called Kidal a martyred town that had been held by terrorists and their sponsors. He said the victory represented a turning point in Mali's commitment to liberating its entire territory. Burkina Faso echoed the sentiment, calling the moment pivotal for the fight against armed groups across the Sahel. But from Western capitals, the reaction was far more measured, far more uncomfortable. France, which had operated in Mali for nearly a decade, which had built bases and trained forces and spent enormous political capital on the Barkhane mission, found itself watching a country it had just been expelled from achieve what France could not. The optics were brutal. Emmanuel Macron's administration had repeatedly implied that without French military presence, Mali would collapse. Mali did not collapse. Mali took Kidal. Analysts in Washington and Brussels began raising concerns about the role of the Africa Corps in the operation. They were right that Russian-linked forces had participated, but they missed or deliberately ignored the more fundamental point. The Malian armed forces themselves had led and executed the operation. This was not a Russian victory, it was a Malian one, with a Russian tool in the toolbox. The United Nations Security Council debated the situation nervously. MINUSMA's withdrawal had been a calculated Malian decision, and many council members were still processing its implications. The humanitarian situation in northern Mali remained dire. The UN noted that many tens of thousands of residents had fled Kidal as the military advanced. The government called for calm and pledged to ensure civilian safety. ECOWAS, which had spent years threatening sanctions against the Malian junta for not returning to civilian rule, watched helplessly as the AES Confederation solidified. In January 2025, when Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger officially withdrew from ECOWAS, it was the final confirmation that a new geopolitical architecture was being built in West Africa, and ECOWAS had no seat at that table. Meanwhile, at the second AES summit in Bamako in December 2025, the three leaders launched AES Television, their own joint broadcaster, specifically designed to, in Goita's words, break disinformation campaigns and hostile narratives targeting our states. They are not just fighting on the ground. They are fighting for the narrative. The old order is watching, and it does not like what it sees. Here is what the evening news will not tell you. The battle for Mali is not primarily a military battle. It is an economic battle, and it has been playing out in the goldfields of northern Mali for years. Gold is the engine of Mali's economy. Gold accounts for approximately 80% of Mali's total exports. The country is one of the largest gold producers in Africa. And in the artisanal mining sector alone, according to Malian officials, the country produces an estimated 26 tons of gold per year. For years, particularly in northern Mali, where government authority was absent, that gold funded terror. JNIM, the Al-Qaeda affiliate, did not just survive on ideology, it survived on money. And a significant portion of that money came from controlling or taxing artisanal gold mines, kidnapping for ransom, livestock theft, and drug trafficking routes that ran straight through the Sahel. The Intahaka mine, in the Gao region of northeastern Mali, is the single largest artisanal gold mine in northern Mali. For years, it passed between the hands of armed groups. JNIM fighters controlled access. A Tuareg militia, the Imgad, operated the mine while paying protection money to the jihadists. The mine was a money machine, and it was funding a killing machine. In February 2024, FAMa forces, supported by Africa Corps troops, moved on Intahaka and secured it. This was not a side operation. This was strategic. When you control the mine, you control the money. When you control the money, you starve the enemy of its fuel. But JNIM adapted. They are not finished. In September 2025, the group declared what analysts described as an economic jihad, blocking fuel tankers and supply convoys heading to gold mines across Mali. According to security analysts, JNIM militants blockaded approximately 70 fuel tankers destined for the Sadiola gold mine operated by Allied Gold. Resolute Mining lowered its annual production guidance because of disruptions to explosives and fuel deliveries. JNIM understood the same equation the FAMa was using: cut the economic oxygen, and the enemy suffocates. And then, in April 2026, the conflict escalated to a new and terrifying level. JNIM and Azawad Liberation Front forces jointly launched coordinated attacks. Mali's defense minister, Colonel Sadio Kamara, a key figure in the transitional government, was killed. President Goita responded by appointing himself defense minister, consolidating direct command of the country's entire security apparatus. This is a man who does not step back when the pressure rises. He steps forward. We must also speak about an issue that has been deliberately buried in mainstream reporting. Between 2011 and 2017, a series of European nations paid substantial ransoms for citizens kidnapped by militant groups operating in the Sahel. The exact total is disputed, but credible reporting places the figure at over $100 million across multiple incidents. Those millions did not disappear. On the ground in the Sahel, they were converted into weapons, vehicles, communications equipment, and recruitment. European governments called it humanitarian necessity, but on the ground, it was a circular system. Money went in, weapons came out, more kidnappings followed. This is the system that the Malian government and the broader AES is trying to break, not just militarily, not just politically, economically. When Goita's government rewrote the mining code and began renegotiating contracts with foreign mining companies, the message was clear. African resources must fund African futures. Gold that was once harvested on Malian soil while Malian citizens lived in poverty, with a poverty rate of 45.3% in 2023, according to the African Development Bank, must now return to Malian hands. The war is everywhere. It is in the dunes, it is in the supply routes, it is in the bank ledgers. And right now, it is not going the way the old system expected. We are standing at a crossroads in the Sahel, and right now, as I speak, the decisions being made in Bamako, Niamey, Ouagadougou, Paris, Moscow, and Washington are shaping which road gets taken. Let me give you 3 scenarios, 3 futures, and the honest truth is all 3 are in play simultaneously. Scenario 1, the consolidation. In this scenario, the AES Confederation continues to build its institutional framework. The joint 5,000-strong military force, the FUAES, inaugurated in December 2025, becomes operational and begins large-scale coordinated operations against JNIM and the FLA. The Malian government successfully secures its northern mining corridors, depriving insurgents of their economic oxygen. The new AES Investment Bank, plans for which were announced in May 2025, begins channeling regional resources into infrastructure, agriculture, and energy. The AES television network breaks the Western information monopoly on Sahel coverage. In this scenario, Africa writes its own story. Scenario 2, the grind. In this scenario, JNIM's pivot to economic warfare succeeds in slowing Mali's progress. The blockades of mining supply routes, already causing significant disruption in late 2025, escalate. Foreign mining companies begin withdrawing, reducing government tax revenues. The humanitarian situation, in areas contested between FAMa, FLA, and GNIM deteriorates. International pressure, sanctions, aid withdrawals, financial restrictions begins to bite. The AES states remain defiant, but the costs of defiance mount. This is the Black Winter Captain Traoré warned about. A war of attrition designed not to defeat the AES militarily, but to exhaust it economically and politically. Scenario 3, the escalation. The April 2026 attack that killed Mali's defense minister signals something more alarming: a coordinated attempt by JNIM and FLA forces to move beyond their northern strongholds and strike at the very heart of the Malian state. Coordinated attacks on Bamako itself, attacks on power grids, attacks designed to terrorize civilians and convince them that the price of sovereignty is too high to pay. In this scenario, Mali faces its most existential test. The question becomes not just, can the FAMa hold the north? But can the Malian state protect its own capital? The honest answer from this correspondence analysis is that all three scenarios are unfolding simultaneously. The Sahel is not a simple battlefield with a clear front line. It is a multidimensional conflict where military advances and economic warfare and political pressure all operate at once. What gives reason for measured confidence, not celebration, but confidence, is this: the AES countries have shown a level of strategic coherence that their opponents did not expect. They have built institutions, they have signed confederation treaties, they have launched joint forces, they have developed their own media infrastructure. These are not the actions of governments that are panicking. These are the actions of governments that are planning. The FAMa that entered Kidal in November 2023 was a different army from the one that was humiliated there in 2014. It had better equipment. It had drone capability. It had a chain of command with a clear political mandate. It had troops trained, increasingly shown on Malian soil, for Malian conditions, answerable to Malian commanders. That transformation does not get reversed overnight. But the road ahead is not clear. It is contested at every meter. We are going to close this dispatch the same way we opened it, in the field. Right now, as you watch this, there are Malian soldiers in the desert north of Bamako who have not slept in 36 hours. There are families in Kidal learning what it means to have a government that can actually reach them. There are insurgents retreating into the deep desert, calculating their next move. And there are men in air-conditioned offices on other continents adjusting their spreadsheets and recalibrating their strategies for a Sahel that is no longer following their script. What we have documented in this report is not a fairy tale. The Malian state faces genuine, urgent, deadly threats. JNIM is not defeated. The humanitarian situation in contested areas is serious. The economic pressures are real. Anyone who tells you this story has a clean, simple ending is lying to you. But what we have also documented is this: a nation that was told it was too broken to stand, stood. A military that was told it was too dependent to fight alone, fought. A government that was told it would collapse without foreign approval, chose itself. And in choosing itself, however imperfectly, however dangerously, it planted a flag. Not just in the sand of Kidal, but in the consciousness of a continent watching to see what comes next. For generations of Africans, in Mali and Niger and Burkina Faso, in the diaspora, in the Americas, in every corner of the world where people carry the memory of a history written by others, this moment carries weight that goes beyond military strategy. It is the weight of a people saying, we will determine our own destiny. We will make our own mistakes. We will carry our own casualties. And we will write our own ending. Whether or not you agree with every decision made by the military governments of the AES, and there are legitimate debates to be had, the underlying assertion cannot be dismissed. African sovereignty is not a slogan. It is a shield. And right now, in the desert north of Bamako, men and women are carrying that shield into the hardest fight of their lives. This is Africa Power Report. We are staying on this story. We will be back with every development, every advance, every setback, every strategic shift as it happens. If this dispatch moved you, subscribe to this channel, hit the notification bell, share this video with everyone who needs to hear this story told straight, and in the comments, Tell us, where are you watching from? What do you think happens next? Are you in the Sahel? In Bamako? In Niamey? In Ouagadougou? Are you in the diaspora, watching from across an ocean, feeling the pull of this story in your bones? Every comment is a data point. Every subscriber is a signal. Africa Power Report does not work for any government, any party, or any foreign interest. We work for the truth and for you. We are keeping watch. We are keeping reporting. Stay with us.